Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode. I'm glad you're all with us. I'm Jacob Hansen, the host of Thoughtful Faith, and today I am joined by Kurt Francom. Kurt.
Hey, Jacob,
Coming on.
welcome. Well, thanks for having me. I'm used to welcoming people on my podcast, but I appreciate the welcoming into your world, and this will be fun. I think it will lead to a great discussion. So
Yeah, excited to have you, man. So you run the Leading Saints podcast. Tell everybody a little bit about the Leading Saints podcast and kind of how you got into what you're doing.
yeah, so Leading Saints, most people know as a podcast. It's actually a 501c3 nonprofit organization. There's sort of this world outside of the main church, official church corporate body of these supporting resources like Scripture Central, Fair Latter-day Saint, the More Good Foundation, and Leading Saints is sort of in that class of organizations that exist to promote the positive mission of the church and to maybe help in a specific way. And we try and cover all things leadership. So we strive to help Latter-day Saints be better prepared to lead. If we want a dynamic discussion about polygamy or church history, there's resources out there. That's not us. But if you want a dynamic research and a discussion about how to run a meeting, how to mentor someone through struggle with pornography, or, insert that leadership struggle, that's sort of what we try and talk about and cover. And it's led to a great a platform where we can talk about a lot of interesting things. And it started back in 2010, it started as sort of a hobby blog where I was called as a young leader. And I just wanted to know, how do I do this effectively? I want to do a good job, but a lot of things that I tried just didn't work. And I fell on my face time and time again, or I couldn't figure out how to motivate people or just execute the mission I had as a church leader. And I could walk into a bookstore and there'll be bookshelves full of life leadership and business leadership and so much research about leadership, organizational behavior, but nobody was really connecting those two worlds and talking about effective leadership in the context of being a lay church leader. And so I started blogging in 2010 and 2014, started the podcast, and that's sort of when it got some traction. And that's why most people know us as the podcast. But we do virtual conferences, we do live conferences, we've started doing retreats, and just sort of exploring the leadership world in the context of the church. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about your personal background and how it kind of led into the Leading Saints organization.
Yeah, so I have a marketing background. I graduated with a marketing degree, and I worked for one of the many multi-level marketing companies in Utah County right after college. I was on the corporate side of things. So I would travel North America and put on presentations to their many distributors. And so that sort of got me into the public speaking world, into the content creation world. And then I ran a web development company for 5 years. But during that time in my church life, I was called in, as a high priest group leader, as a bishop, and a stake presidency. And so I kept coming up with these scenarios and these dynamics that I didn't know how to handle. And so that sort of fed into the blogging and then the podcasting. And now Leading Saints is my full-time effort as the executive director of the organization. So
That's awesome. Well, yeah. I imagine that the group that are not only, but I imagine a great deal of the people that you work with are men in the church. Is that right?
Yeah, we definitely our tradition. I think there's more, official leadership roles for men in the church. And I think a lot of people, I hear a lot from Elders Quorum presidents, from young men's advisors who are wanting to stimulate positive development of young men, of older men. And, I don't think Elders Quorum has necessarily an overly positive, exceptional, exceptional experience in the church. Right. And so I haven't met too many men who really look forward to Elders Quorum or who credit Elders Quorum for a lot of their positive development as men. So yeah, it's an interesting dynamic that I've spent a lot of time with.
Which is funny because Elders Quorum does kind of not have if you're going to say, where is the area that's really driving your development in your life? Elders Quorum usually isn't high on that list, but it's funny because the young men's program, at least traditionally, has been seen, and even for myself personally, as a very powerful part of my development growing up. Do you have, what are your thoughts on, I mean, maybe we can go into that later in the video, but just off the top of your head, like, what do you think is the difference?
Well, I think the development of a teenager, I just have, my oldest is about to turn 12 here in 6 months or so. And so I'm like, walking into this dynamic just in my personal life. But it is so, like, the struggles they experience are so obvious at times. You can tell when, that sweet young girl who used to jump up on daddy's lap suddenly is secluding herself in the bedroom. Or, man, my boy who we played Little League, I was his Little League coach and we just had such a great relationship. Suddenly there's some secluding, or he's really struggling, or anxiety. Mental health always comes up with youth, and with social media in there, and pornography and all these things, it just, I think, manifests itself more obvious. And as parents, we naturally, or as youth leaders, we naturally have this determination of, I think I'm supposed to play a role in it. I think I need to step in and do something. And so I think it's easier to sort of see those problems as youth and then jump in and try and figure them out. And that's why, a lot of resources goes to youth. You look at all the resources in the church with YSA, retreats and whatnot, and the programs we have in place, and weekly youth activities. We're always coming together, and it's easy to sort of link arms as adult Latter-day Saints and say, we need to make a difference in this youth life, because there's some pivotal things happening that could impact the rest of their life. So we got to act now.
Yeah, but once you get to Elders Quorum, it's sort of like, all right, well, you're married, and now you're just kind of getting to a particular rut. It's funny. I've worked with the youth for the last about decade. I've been in the young men's in one way or another. Now, actually, it's got called as a seminary teacher, and so I'm very much aware of the efforts that are put into these youth. But we live in a society right now where, people have talked about sort of the crisis of men in society generally. And I just, I want to show actually with to the audience real quick, a couple of stats that I found that were really shocking to me. So I'm going to put one up here on the screen. And this is the percent of all college degrees, male versus female.
Wow. Striking.
I was shocked by this. Yeah. And for those of you who aren't watching, it's just an X.
Yeah.
With
one's going up and one's going down.
Yeah, the females going up and the men are going down. And they're projecting that by 2027, it'll be women, 60% of degrees will be going to women, and 39% will be going to men. And that's a really stark difference. And so the trend is towards men, failing. Another thing I wanted to show people was suicide rates.
Yes.
Most people don't realize that, you're looking at, for every one female suicide, you're looking at 3 male suicides. The suicide epidemic that we see in our country and in our society is male driven. And so, how often are we hearing in the popular culture about the struggles of men? Right. I think you in your conversation with Greg Mattson, and that was actually, and I encourage everyone to go watch that episode. That was actually the interview that inspired me to want to, hey, we got to talk about this, because nice. I really enjoyed that interview. But you said something about, you had mentioned that in the group of church, the group that's most likely to have someone commit suicide is in the Elders Quorum.
Yeah. Yeah. When I first heard this stat, it blew me away too, because I think naturally we default to, I think it's youth. I think, unfortunately, many of us have heard of a youth suicide, and that breaks our heart. Like, what more could we have done, right? But yeah. It's actually the demographic of Elders Quorum. If you're trying to prevent the next suicide in a ward, on average, it's going to happen in the Elders Quorum. But and then you look at the resources and how they're laid out and where we put our focus, and oftentimes the Elders Quorum is at the bottom of the list. We sort of just expect them to figure it out and, buck up and be men and focus on your families and do this and that. We don't really nourish that segment of our population.
Yeah, and I sent you over a video in preparation for our interview. It's an interview with Bishop Robert Barron. He's a Catholic bishop, very active online as sort of an evangelist and or social commentator for the Catholic Church. I am a huge fan of Bishop Barron.
Yeah, he's fun to listen to.
He's fun to listen to. I think he's great. And I encourage people to go and listen to him. And anyway, in this discussion, they were talking about kind of why modern men look for spiritual wisdom outside the church. And I figured we kind of just to roll into this, what we're doing right now, things from that interview maybe that you think are relevant to what we've been talking about so far. Is there anything that you might want to go into? Any clips you think we should delve into on this?
Yeah. So the first clip I pointed out just at the beginning, they're sort of, they're asking that question. Why are some of these stoic focused individuals getting so much attention, like Jordan Peterson, they're Jocko Willink, Tim Ferriss, Brett McKay, who's actually a fellow Latter-day Saint.
Yeah.
And, why is their content drawing people when they don't have necessarily an overtone of religion in them? And so that's sort of what they're breaking down in this clip.
Yeah, let's pull it up and listen to what they have to say.
Specifically like to focus on why Stoicism has become so appealing to many young men today and what lessons we might learn from this dynamic. So let me ask you something you've raised many times. Why has it been that contemporary Christianity has failed by and large to reach young men? We're facing attrition across the board. You and I talk about it all the time, but we do seem to do somewhat better with young women than young men. Why is that? Why do we have such difficulty engaging young men?
We haven't made it hard and challenging. I agree with Jordan Peterson. When he and I had a conversation, probably a couple years ago now, he made that point. And, I came of age in the period after Vatican II when we did, for different reasons. And I'm not blaming those who did it, but we kind of softened the operation in many ways. We did rather feminize the language and style. And men, I think, respond to being challenged. They want hard, difficult things to do. They want a sense of mission and purpose. And I think we got pretty bad at doing that. Brent, I'll tell you exactly what it was. The instinct, we better be as kind of nice and inviting as we can. Otherwise, they're going to run away. We're going to lose the young people unless we, make it as easy for them as possible. Well, of course, it's this irony that it had the opposite effect. That's, in a way, why they ran away, that we didn't make it hard and challenging. This goes back many years. My mother, I remember saying this, we were at Mass, we were kids at the time, and it was the Passion reading, right? And the priest got up and said, everybody, don't feel obligated to stand during this whole thing. If you want to sit, during I know it's long and it's a lot to listen to, so sit down if you want to. And we got home, my mother said, kind of shaking her head, and she said, when I was a little girl, we were told, stand and don't move during the Passion reading because you're meant to participate in the suffering of Jesus. And so to try to be as still as you can. Now, okay, say it's a silly example, but it was the church willing to call people to something more challenging and say, look, this thing is meant to be hard. Something we, in my experience, I don't know if it's true for you, Brandon, but we've kind of done away with on Good Friday when we do the petitions. There's that rhythm of kneeling and then standing. Well, it's hard. I don't want to over dramatize it, but there's a lot of these petitions. I don't know how about 20 or so, right, that we do. And kneel and then stand and then kneel and then stand. But of course, the whole idea was you're participating in the suffering of Jesus. It's Good Friday. It's meant to be hard. But very often I'd say people, that's a little much. Let's not have people do all that kneeling, standing stuff. That's too hard for them. I think that instinct pushed a lot of young men away, still does. As Peterson said, correctly, I think, make it harder, make it more demanding, and young men will find it more enticing.
Anyway, so you have people like Jordan.
Oh, I just lost your audio.
Sorry about that.
Switch? Oh, there you
I
go.
was just going to say, so with that clip, just as a quick preference, maybe we should have made this beforehand, but you have people like Jocko Willink, people like Jordan Peterson, Tim Ferriss, these people you're pointing out, and they're drawing crowds of young men to, and when people listen to what they're saying, you're like, this sounds a lot like the stuff that we learn at church. Why is it that we have these massive crowds? I went to a Jordan Peterson event in Salt Lake City and it was packed. Wow. And I'm like, yet we struggle to get, men, and it was almost all male, young men. And it's like, what are these guys doing to excite people? Now, they obviously, he's saying one of the things is that, they call men to a challenge, to betterment, to this higher way. What are your thoughts on that clip?
Yeah, I mean, there's something, I think it's an oversimplification a little bit to just say, well, we're just not asking them to do hard things. At least when I look at it from a Latter-day Saint perspective, or a Latter-day Saint may hear that and think, oh, Bishop Barron, you got to come check out what we got cooking as Latter-day Saints, because we've figured it out. We've cracked the code on hard things. Because, I think about our tradition of scouting. Now, a lot of Christian, denominations leverage scouting for so many years. And I'll be the first to admit it had its problems, that I'm not necessarily too upset that it's discontinued. But our mission experience, that for me was a super developmental experience of leaving my home, my bubble for 2 years and going out and doing really difficult things. Like, that was really hard to do. And then on the other side, I think, he references different practices in his tradition, in his faith tradition, that have been softened, right? And I can think of some of those. Even the mission experience has been softened a little bit, though I think it's still a dynamic and difficult thing for young people to engage in. But even the scouting experience is prominent. Going, merit badges and going camping, and yeah, we still do that in the new young men's program and whatnot. But it's definitely softened. Go ahead.
And I was going to say, and I wonder how much of it, like within our tradition, we do have things that have been challenging. And I think that's one of the reasons I think that we've actually retained a certain level of membership is because a challenging religion is one that people actually are drawn more to. And now, you can call your parents every week on the mission. There isn't that isolation that you used to have. Maybe that's softened to a certain extent, and people can have their opinions about it. But I think there is a cautionary tale in softening things up.
Yeah.
But at the same time, just giving people hard things to do I don't think that's it alone. I don't think that Bishop Barron would say that alone, like just make people do hard things. Right.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I kind of see in our, as you age into adulthood as a man in our faith experience, we sort of just give hard things for the sake of hard things. Like, here's your calling, and don't complain. You're not supposed to complain. You just do it. Or here's the service assignment. We need 10 people for the canning assignment this weekend, and come on, we really got to do this. And ministering, and there's sort of this overemphasis on behaviors that this is the Christian way. You just do hard things, when in reality we leave behind this concept of fulfillment, of missing the heart of men and defaulting to hyper focusing on obedience. Just be obedient to the calling. Your bishop has asked you to do this. You should do it. I get this email a lot from Elders Quorum presidents, bishops around the world of ministering. Like, I can't get these men to just go visit somebody, call somebody. Like, what's the problem? And it's easy to default to laziness, the apathy. And I think apathy is a myth in a lot of our faith experience, because we've asked them to do something for the sake of obedience, when in reality we never stopped to consider fulfillment, where my mission was incredibly fulfilling to me, even though, there were long days and hard days and tears in bed, trying not to let my companion hear me crying. Right. But that experience together, as I look back, like, whoa, like that was a very fulfilling thing. And I worry that hearing that message, some people think, oh, we just need to do hard things. And, well, we got a list of hard things to do, but nobody seems to do it. And so therefore we default to an apathy problem, which I think is a trap.
Yeah. And when I think about it, it's the why. It's the when you really catch the vision as to why you're doing these things and why they matter, I think that transforms everything. Right. Because it isn't just about having people do things. It's about having a why behind why they do it. Right. Is that the way you Yeah.
And I think a really difficult thing to do in leadership is connecting the why with the people you're leading. So for ministering, for example, like the Elders Quorum president can go on for hours about why we need to do that. Don't you want to be part of a culture that visits people, that checks on people, that, you know, is making sure that they have a meal when they're sick or had a baby or whatever it is? But we haven't stepped back to what it can be interpreted as like, oh no, the Elders Quorum president, he just doesn't want to fail in his calling. He just wants me to do these things because he's the one that has to fill out the report of how many ministering interviews he does. So he's just meeting with me because there's a report due, right? And so there's all these dynamics that the leader has to navigate in order to motivate a group of men. And so they give them a why. They sort of, oh, you need a why? Here's a why. But nobody came to them and said, well, why would this even be fulfilling in your life? Or what are you seeking for in your life that would be fulfilling, that would give you the why to show up and develop as a man? And
so maybe it's a why, but it's not a why that they find very compelling.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
I see. So we have a slide here. I don't know if you want me to go to it.
Sure.
That has from the article that they're actually talking about in this Bishop Barron interview. I'm going to pull up this on the screen. Oops, let me add this to it. And it says, if we had to distill the message common to all three, meaning modern Stoics, it might be this twofold teaching. The good life is a virtuous one, based on lasting moral principles that forge meaning in the crucible of suffering. And two, each individual is called out of nihilism and hedonism to take responsibility and live such a life. For men who seem to be in a crisis of identity and meaning, this message has a magnetic appeal. So,
yes. Yeah, so I actually added the emphasis on forging meaning, right? Like this is the step we skip sometime, that we sort of do things because, you know, this is what we do as Latter-day Saints. We have these assignments, we have these callings, you should just do them. And that's not an appealing message to a lot of men. And so they just show up, or they just stick around for Elders Quorum because, well, the wife has the keys to the minivan and I can't just leave. So I guess I'll get through this lesson and read a quote or two and then go home. Right. And just relax and maybe watch the NFL game, even though I'm probably not supposed to watch the NFL, but I need that something to sort of detach from the suffering. And I love how the author Shane Morris inserts that the crucible of suffering. I forget how he says it exactly, but I think a lot of men, you know, they get back from the mission. They've done the things, right? They've jumped through the hoops. A lot of them are hard hoops to jump through, like the mission. They feel fulfilled. They do the marriage thing and they get going in their life and they realize, wow, this is really hard. Like, wow, I don't know how to show up as a husband. I don't know how to show up as a father. And so I can't reconcile that feeling in me that I'm failing, and it's probably obvious to everybody that I'm failing. I can't keep a job, or man, I thought I'd be so further along in my career than I am now. And they can't reconcile that. So they have to turn to something to numb out. And that's why pornography is such a problem in our faith tradition, or video games, or just secluding, or unfortunately for some men, it gets to the point where they don't see how they can continue on in mortality, and they take that awful step that we don't want nobody to take.
So there's some level to which their hearts are not being engaged. Mm-hmm. And if their hearts are not really in it and they're not being engaged, you know, what do you see? What is it that makes people's hearts come alive, especially for men?
Well, I think it starts with just simply asking men that question. And because a lot of men, they don't ask that question themselves. They don't take time or space to do it because there's this constant push of behavioral, of compliance, like just act a certain way and that will lead to happiness. And I think that's the cognitive dissonance comes up, is like, wait a minute, I've done all the things and life doesn't seem to be working, and there's still suffering in life. I thought the gospel was supposed to make me happy, but it's not, right?
So it's so funny. I'm right now, for Come Follow Me, we're studying Romans. Mm-hmm. And I came to realize that the book of Romans is literally like, it's about this problem. It's this idea of going through the motions. Mm-hmm. It's the idea of the works without the faith. Mm-hmm. It's that there's something in a fulfilled individual, male or female, but in this context, we're talking about men, of your actions emerging from you, from your heart.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone can go through the motions. Anyone can do the rituals, right? Can go through the work. But where it transforms is when those things emerge from a place of faith, from a place of real, sincere desire and love, right? I've heard it. There's a great speaker who came to BYU Hawaii, and he said there's only 3 reasons people do things. They either do them out of fear, which is where they say, I have to do this,
Mm-hmm.
right? Otherwise there's consequences. They can do it out of duty, where they say, I should do this thing, and therefore they do it. Or they can do it out of love, which is where you say, I want to do this thing.
Right.
And he compared it to living, telestial, terrestrial, or celestial level of life. Like, are you living a life that you want to live out of love? But the thing is, in the gospel, it's like, I guess what we're doing is we're trying to train people to love the right things, right?
Right.
To learn to love God and righteousness and the things that ultimately bring joy to your soul, right? And that will fulfill you. And so, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So exactly right. That I think it breaks my heart when I hear individuals maybe leave the church, and they do so and they attempt to articulate why they left. And I think, man, you are leaving a church that I never joined. Like this tone of burdensome, this tone of like obligation and overwhelm, right? And at the same time, I can sort of see how they can be guided to that framing, but it's such an incorrect framing because there is this feeling, we're heavy on the commandments, the covenants, the rituals, right? The temple experience. And that can be framed in such a negative way of like, man, there's just so many restrictions. I just couldn't even be myself, right? Like, wait a minute. No, these are tools put in place, given to us to strengthen us, to allow us to face the world and the suffering we face in mortality so that we can make it another day. And unfortunately, I think maybe just coming out of that primary framing of like, well, if you live the gospel, you'll just be happy. And I think that framing, especially for men, is not helping. It's admitting that life and mortality will be very difficult. There'll be a lot of suffering. And that is why we need a savior. That's why we need to turn to our relationship with God and enter into a relationship with him so that we can be strengthened and face the world once again, knowing that we can overcome it through the power of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to real quickly move on to another slide, because Jordan Peterson, everyone knows I'm a raging fan of Dr. Jordan Peterson.
And for the record, I'm a fan as well. So.
and there are a bunch of others who I also agree, and they seem to have this success that churches maybe are not, including our own, and that I think that all of us in the church ought to look to these people and recognize. What's crazy is you listen to them. I have a series on my channel called Elders Quorum taught by Jordan Peterson,
Oh, cool.
And so it's like where he's basically saying things that are like straight out of our scriptures practically. And it's like, holy cow. Yet he has an audience of captivated young men just like hanging on his every word. And you have to wonder, what's causing this? And Bishop Barron talks about this in the video. So let's listen in.
You mentioned already Jordan Peterson a couple times. I want to ask you about the so-called Jordan Peterson phenomenon. And here, I'm not specifically talking about his political or cultural activity. We can disagree with him on all sorts of things, but I want to focus specifically on his biblical lectures on YouTube and his philosophical self-help books, such as 12 Rules for Life, which was a massive bestseller, millions and millions of copies sold. Both of those things, the biblical lectures on YouTube and his books, are very, very popular among young men. He's clearly struck a chord. He's discovered a way to present the scriptures and basic moral philosophy to many people. Why do you think he's been so successful as a spiritual guide to young men? What does he do right?
Because not in a total sense, because the Bible has so many different dimensions to it, and I don't know if Jordan is there yet when it comes to the kind of deepest or highest kind of mystical dimension of the Bible. But when it comes to the moral sense, and that's what the church fathers would have called it.
I just want to make a quick comment before we continue on there. I think that's a brilliant observation by Bishop Barron. And I think Latter-day Saints should recognize that. I think that's a good way of sort of breaking it down. He misses sort of the maybe some of the deeper spiritual side of it. But on this moral level, he really does seem to connect and understand and be able to convey it in this incredibly compelling way. And so it's like, he has this, like, he's so close to like seeing the bigger picture and making that connection. Some people say that he's the gateway drug to religion.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, and that's one thing I hope comes out of our discussion is that, like, I love Jordan Peterson. I love the principles and values that Stoicism teaches. But it's like, oh my goodness, like take more steps into what we have in this religious tradition. Like, it is so much more, and there's so much depth to it all, right? And it's almost like, man, Jordan, Brother Peterson, like, stop by and really sit with these doctrines. And I think there's a lot of Christians out there like, oh, come on, you're getting close, like just one more step and you're in the font. But that's what I really want men to recognize, is that it's not like, well, maybe look to, pick up the Book of Mormon or Jordan Peterson's book, like whatever works for you. Like, no, we have a much more depth in our tradition the longer you sit with it and lean into it.
Yep, for sure.
The moral sense of Scripture, that it's calling us to a renewed life. He's darn good at that, I think. And he lets the Bible be the Bible. How many times when I was growing up did sermons emphasize how good we are, how loved we are, you're okay, God loves you, and where the Bible, having again been rather immersed in the last many years doing all these commentaries, man, the Bible is a rough text in many ways. It is a really challenging text. I'm working as we speak right now on the prophet Jeremiah. You think like, I'm okay, you're okay, and God loves you, everything's going to be fine. Then read any page, any paragraph of the book of Jeremiah, and you'll find that completely contradicted. Peterson, I think, has put his finger on the deep moral demand, and I call it this, the deep spiritual honesty of the Bible. It's telling us very profound truths, often difficult truths to take in about ourselves, and then calling us to something really heroic. Well, look who comes to his lectures. People are running away from the churches. They're running toward people like him.
Ooh, I love that.
That's true.
He lets the Bible be the Bible, and there's a deep honesty in the message that he gives. It's not this teddy bear, sunshine and rainbows, you're fine just the way you are message, because that's not the message of Scripture. But is that the message that we get from the church over and over?
Yeah. And I think if we can dial this in, like, we can have men running towards Elders Quorum. Like, I really have faith and belief in that. But I think we need to sit with these dynamics a little longer and really figure out, how do we tap into the masculine heart? What's in there that we are sort of restricting? I think a lot of men, they don't want conformity. They want a calling, right? Now we've sort of used and abused that word over the years with callings, it's your assignment at church, but men deeply want permission to step into a calling, not just any calling, but a risky calling, right? Not the safe path, but the one that will sort of require something of them. And they really want to be able to answer the question, do I have what it takes, right? John Eldridge always goes back to this question. Do I have what it takes to go to graduate school, or to start that business, or, to really step into a larger story that's going to make me the man that I want to be?
Well, and I think part of it too, going back to that clip, is that when you're told, hey, you're just fine the way you are, we all down deep know we're not. And that's the thing, is that like, people have been told so much, hey, you're great. Like, just believe in yourself. Like, you're just fine. Where Jordan Peterson and some of these others and the Scriptures say you're not who you can be. And you deep down in your heart know that. And you could be something bigger and something better. And so there is an impetus to say, let's go out and make ourselves better, make us into something, you know, above and beyond ourselves. And I think that's, at least for me, sort of where callings become truly callings. Like, I'm being called forth by the Lord to shake off this piece of crap that I am and to do something that's worthwhile. And then as I do those things, I gain something that I think all men need. And that is a sense of self-respect. Men gain a sense of self-respect when you can't have somebody tell you, oh, you're so great. What you have to do is do something where you actually did something difficult. And then you look yourself in the mirror and you go, I did something difficult.
Right.
Maybe I'm not such a loser after all.
Yeah.
But you got to get up out of bed and do it. And you got to go and be called forth into, like, and the church does offer us these opportunities, but I think, I don't know. I feel like we are, I think that men aren't sold the story well. They aren't told the narrative well. And so it's not compelling to them. And when you don't have a compelling narrative to live by, you default to hedonism or to, you know, nihilism, as they talk about in this clip. But I've kind of gone off subject a little bit. But the basic idea, though, is that, you know, Jordan Peterson is calling us to something heroic.
Right. Yeah, there's this, I don't know if it was in the article, but this phrase of, calling us to something heroic, right? Like, you are the protagonist in the story, and you may have some failures, but it's going to turn into something great. And the Bible is full of story after story of God taking the most ordinary, the most flawed individual and turning them into people that we can't stop talking about. You know, you think of Moses and Abraham and King David, and I mean, Jesus, and I mean, it just goes, you know, even Paul, right? I mean, there's so many of these stories of, I will show you that I can do anything with anybody if you step onto my story. And it's going to be scary. It's going to be hard. But the development that you'll come out of it, it will be remarkable. I think back from the time of the primary child singing the song, I am a child of God. The beauty of these hard things, of these processes, of these callings, is they revealed the divine identity within us. They start to, they call us out of the ordinary into the extraordinary, so that we can become more like God. And the simplest phrase, I am a child of God, that means that you don't just live an ordinary life or do the easiest path. Like, you are destined for something remarkable.
Could I maybe push back a little bit on one point there? That I hope, the idea of you being the protagonist of your own story. I think that there is a sense in which that's true, but there's a sense in which I think we should be cautious about it. One of the, I think, fundamentals of the gospel is that you find your life by losing it. Right? And there recently was, I don't know if people have been following at all, Shia LaBeouf at all. Have you been following his conversion to Catholicism?
I've seen a few clips where he's a God guy.
Yeah, he's become this, and regardless of the depth of his philosophy, there's an experience there with him where you had someone who was totally lost and basically found his purpose and a new, he was, for lack of a better term, he's being reborn through faith in God. And he said something recently that I thought was interesting, that maybe is a different take on being the protagonist of your story. I'm going to pull up. I'm going to pull this up real quick and put it on the screen here. Just take me 1 second here. Well, I'll take a listen.
My purpose in life isn't to be happy no more. That's what my purpose used to be, which is such a shitty aim in life. My aim in life, in totality, my whole purpose for existing in life was to be happy. And that's not my purpose anymore.
And now?
Yeah, my purpose now is to be useful. And so it doesn't make me useful to my wife to shame spiral on some shit like that. It makes me useful to my wife to show up for my wife and be stable for my wife when we take our kid to the children's hospital and she's tripping. And I happen to have a relationship with God that centers me at this point where I can be in an environment like that and be able to hold it down in that environment. So that's what my amends looks like today.
So he says, that his purpose in life is not to find happiness, but essentially, I think what he's saying is that I actually find happiness when I don't make myself the center, but that I make something outside of myself the center, and my own development in relationship to that thing is what ultimately where I find fulfillment.
Yeah.
So what's your take on that?
Yeah. So this is, I mean, just like all things, there's sort of this, and this is why the Stoic voice is so tempting, is that, you know, Jordan Peterson wants you to step up and to take control of your life and do these things and be the protagonist, right? But then there's this feeling of, well, wait a minute, where's God? We need to be giving of ourselves. And so there's sort of the spectrum that I feel like a lot of the religious messages default to that. Like, you need to give of yourself, you know, you need to focus on your family, and it's not about your goals anymore. It's about just giving of yourself. Now, obviously Christ taught us that, but we begin to lose ourselves so much in that effort that we lose our heart at the same time. But we've left our heart out in the sun to just dry up and rot, because that's not where I'm supposed to focus. But it is, our family doesn't necessarily want us and our attention. Our family wants our strength. And so if we don't nurture our own heart and see our, having a heart alive to offer our family, to offer our communities, then what good is it? And so that's the balance, right? That we need to give of ourselves, but we can't do that without our heart being alive. We can't just get a job and dial in the 401k because that's the best thing, the safest path, right? It's almost like Luke Skywalker staying on his home planet. And if I was a better Star Wars nerd, I'd know the name of it.
It's Tatooine.
Tatooine, thank you. Luke Skywalker, the safest path was him to stay on Tatooine, take his uncle's farm over, dial it in, figure out how to triple his crop, and, have a wife and kids and do the thing. But no, there was a larger story that only through him stepping into that larger story was he able to chip away at the false identity of being a Tatooine farmer that he needed to do, right? And so it is he needed that story of stepping in as a protagonist, in the context of religion, with the help of the Almighty, with God revealing the identity. So not that he can get to the medal ceremony and say, look at me, I've got this medal, and Chewie deserves one too. But to get to that ceremony and say, I have this medal because God made me. And we should glorify God because he made me a protagonist in the story succeed. And therefore, God is the real protagonist. This is God's story of how he's developing individuals in such phenomenal ways that could be impossible on Tatooine.
Yeah. I'm going to do this, everybody. I think what we'll do is we're going to take a break. We're going to continue this in the next conversation. We're going to go and look into this sort of nature of what fulfills our heart and our identity as men in the church. Because I think that you probably would agree, Kurt, that at the end of the day, I think that's probably where the heart of the problem is with men in the church and struggling is that something isn't getting into our hearts. Our hearts are not being brought alive, and that I think is holding us back. So let's take a quick break. We'll catch y'all in the next episode. I hope y'all join us. So do you enjoy the content here on Thoughtful Faith? If so, be sure to hit the notification bell. This ensures that our new videos show up on your feed. Also, be sure to check out our Facebook group called Thoughtful Saints, where myself and others discuss the sorts of topics found on this channel. And lastly, if you think other people would benefit from this video, please be sure to share it.